Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are making Feminite du Bois. Hope I said that correctly. I don't know. I'm not French and I'm drinking scotch. So don't hold it against me. It's Friday night and I've been potty training my daughter all day. And I'm looking forward to creating a straightforward formula that is a mid-90s amber, woody, floral. Really looking forward to it. This perfume was released first under the Shiseido brand in 1992. It was perfumed by Pierre Bourdon and Christopher Sheldrake. In 2009, this fragrance was moved to Serge Lutens. And there it sits today. I've never actually smelled it, but at least from what I'm reading on Fragrantica about the ratings, a lot of people like this. A lot of women like this. This is targeted towards women, and I'm looking for it. I'm a fan of this style of perfumery, or at least this genre of perfumery, so I'm really looking forward to it. There aren't many ingredients. I haven't counted all these, but I'm going to spitball it and say there's 30. That's not much. There are also some heavy doses of certain materials in here. Iso-E Super is one. Isoraldeine or methyl and methyl is another. There's a lot of Sandalore, a lot of Canthoxal, which I'm really interested in. This is like a licorice basil phenyl smell. There's a lot of Canthoxal in here. So I'm looking forward to putting this together. So why don't we get started? First, we're not going to go with the Iso-E Super. We're going to add that last. What we're going to start with is our floral core. Floral core, and I hope today I can say that word floral a little bit better than I did last time. The first ingredient we are going to add is Ylang. Ylang Ylang Extra. You don't need much Ylang Ylang to make an impact on your fragrance. Now, most of what we're putting in here, aside from the Isoraldeine, the N-methyl, is rosy. We have a lot of phenyl ethyl alcohol, Citronellol. We have some actual rose Otto that I'm going to put in here. Done. And I overdid it by a drop. Sorry, formula. Apologies. All right, Ylang. Done. While we're on the non-rose materials, let's add, I don't know what to do with Nectaryl. This is our more fruity note. All right, Nectaryl, Methyl Anthranilate, let's wait. Those are the more fruity materials. Let's add in the Indole. We'll add in the Isoraldeine and the Citronellol, all that stuff. So let's do our Citronellol. I'm adding this in neat, but this is 3% of the juice is in Citronellol. Done. Done. Citronellol, phenyl ethyl alcohol, geraniol. Kablow. You have rose. Of course, you add other stuff. You can liven it up, give it a little bit more realism, but you don't need much for some simple rose. All right, next up, Ethyl Linalool. There's a fair bit of this. I like how Sarah McCartney, the owner and creator of 41,060 Tuesdays, how's that for a brand name? She calls stuff like Linalool furniture in your fragrance. She has clouds. She thinks in terms of planets as far as how she organizes her fragrances. And I've seen a couple of formulas of hers, and she talks about, or at least she writes down, hey, here's a, I need more ethyl linalool. Anyway, she will write down that she needs, or, here are your clouds, here's your sun, here's your planet. But occasionally she'll write, here's furniture. And quite often it's stuff like linalool, stuff that you can throw into your formula. It helps build it out, it helps broaden it, but it doesn't necessarily change the dynamic of your formula. At least that's my understanding of it with where I'm at in my journey. Give me a moment. I need ethyl linalool. Okay, I'm back. I have my ethyl linalool. I just pulled it out of the fridge. I'm going to warm it up a little bit. I'm going to give it a second before I dive in. I once had some bergamot, small 15 milliliters of bergamot that I had in my fridge. I think I opened it up when it was humid, when the bottle was too cold. Pulled in a little bit of wet air. That cold bottle let that wet air condensate on the inside of the bottle, and then my bergamot had water in it. No bueno. So I'm just cognizant of how cold my bottle is whenever I pull out refrigerated bottles and put it into the formula. Let's move to Givescone. Givescone is nice. It's a little fruity, rosy. Also, to my nose, kind of functions like furniture. But maybe a touch more rosy than ethyl, or than linalool or ethyl linalool. Good. Okay, let's keep trucking along. Forgive the mess back here. Got a bunch of materials here and elsewhere that need dilution, tagging, inventory management, etc. So, next up, make sure I have enough. Phenyl ethyl alcohol, otherwise known as phenyl ethanol or phenyl ethanol. There's so many names for this. All right, PEA, let's do it. I'm fascinated with this smell, not just because of what it smells like, but what it does in my nose, the kind of experience I have in my nose with phenyl ethyl alcohol versus, say, citronellol. Phenyl ethyl alcohol is deep. It's heavy. It's round. Doesn't mean it's a bass note, but that's just what it feels like. Smooth, heavy, central in my nose. Then I get citronellol and it's a little higher pitched, zingy, a little more spread out. It's just interesting that I visualize that in my head. I visualize the olfactory sensations. Okay, next up, Rose Otto. I'm using real Rose Otto here. Now, again, if you don't have real Rose Otto, or Otto is just another word for oil, rose oil instead of Rose Absolute. Rose oil from Bulgaria. You can use, let me jog my memory, rose essence. Rose essence, one word, from Firmenich, is a Bulgarian Rose Otto reconstitution or reconstruction. 1, 2, probably a splash. Yep, a splash. Good. Of real rose. Exciting we're using real rose in here. Okay. Let's do a little bit of our Indole. Okay. Indole is in. Next up, we have our last two florals. Let's do our ethyl linalool. Ethyl Linalool, a touch sweeter to my nose than linalool. Both metallic. Linalool and ethyl linalool are both metallic, metal-esque. They're a little sharp and zingy. They're nice. They're, to my nose, they are simultaneously warm, but also bright. One more drop. All right. I better do a quick drink of scotch before we get our Isoraldeine. Okay, Isoraldeine 95 from Givescone. Come on. These cone liners occasionally fall out of the cap onto the ground. It's a mess. And unfortunately, I have carpet in here, so I have to be very careful. Okay, there's a fair bit of this stuff in this juice. Don't need that much. Okay, 0.18 grams in this particular formula. 12% of the juice is Isoraldeine 95. I need to do more study of older fragrances. And by older, I mean early 70s, 60s, because Isoraldeine or Iralia really contributes to that dated smell, that vintage perfume dated smell from the 60s and before. But it's some combination of rose, the musk, civet. There's some other stuff going on that I'd like to understand more, but it can contribute to a old person smell. No offense to old people. I'm getting there myself. Okay. Per usual, we are going to let this serve as our base reference. We're going to write this. This is going to be called our rosy core. Number 1. We're going to dip, dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, and then put it over here to chill. We'll smell it after we put in our 2 more fruity materials. Now, Methyl Anthranilate, I have it classified as a fruit as far as how I have my stuff organized. But it's floral and it's sweet as well. It's also very bright. It's very cool. It's a very cool material. Fun story. I tested out some vintage brut that I made a while ago, and I have 2 versions. One version does not have Exaltolide and Methyl Anthranilate, and one version does. And there's not much Methyl Anthranilate in the formula, but boy, does it make a difference. Huge difference. Oh boy, I don't need much. I actually don't even need a full drop. All right, that's enough. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Methyl Anthranilate. It's wonderful. Floral, fruity, sweet. It's bright. It's some good stuff. Next up, Nectaryl from Givescone, otherwise known as peach cyclopentanone. Yep, peachy, fruity, little apricot. Good stuff. I'm very interested to smell what this does in the formula. The last time I had the opportunity to use Nectaryl, I didn't have it. So instead I've used Nectarate. Don't know if that was a good idea. I think I was making Guerlain Samsara, and a viewer pointed out that maybe I shouldn't have done that because the chemistry works a whole bunch very differently between these 2 chemicals. I went back and smelled it. Turns out it didn't matter. It smelled fantastic. The Samsara is still fantastic, even though I used Nectarate rather than Nectaryl. But this is the first time now I'll have used Nectaryl in a formula. So Give that a swirl. We're just going to write fruits on this. And then we're going to evaluate our rosy core. Dip. Let it sit. Here we go. If we stopped here, or if we added, again, if we added musk ambret, civet, maybe some aldehyde C10, we'd be straight up into, we'd be back in the 50s. But this is rosy, but that Isoraldeine is prominent. It's very forward. I wonder what this would be like without the Ylang Ylang to help thicken it up, give it more body. But as it stands, this is a great blend. If we were just to do the Ylang, the rosy materials, the Isoraldeine, it's a good place to start as far as a floral core is concerned. Next up, we add the Methyl Anthranilate and the Nectaryl. My friends, absolute game changer. Wow. That Methyl Anthranilate is so strong. Completely changes it. Wow. Methyl Anthranilate is 0.03% of the juice. I'm blown away. Okay. I'm logging this in my head. I'm logging it in my head that the next time I have a formula that just needs a little something, it's a little too dense or it's not bright enough, methyl anthranilate could be an option. And you don't need much. Okay, you don't need much. Now, methyl anthranilate should die off quicker than the Nectaryl. So I'm interested to see how this evolves, but let's keep going. Next up, we're going to add our spices. We've got Eugenol, Canthoxal, that licorice note. We have Cinnamaldehyde or cinnamic aldehyde. Looking forward to that. I love cinnamic aldehyde. Also very strong, and there's a lot of it in here. And then cumin. BO. We are putting body odor in our fragrance. So you gotta love it. Let's start with our Canthoxal. 6% of the juice is this note, this licorice basil phenyl note. Let's do it. Another draw. Here we go. Done. All right. Put it away. Next up, cinnamic aldehyde or cinnamaldehyde. Okay. 0.45 grams at a 1% dilution in this particular formula. Now, the numbers I'm saying are going to be different than the numbers you see in the description, the episode description. Because what you see in the description is probably parts per thousand. I've taken that formula and taken that parts per thousand and applied it to a 6.8 gram sample. So a little math here, a little math there with my favorite perfumery app, Formulaire, and the numbers are going to be different. But I'm building a 6 gram sample. The concentrate here, because I'm using a lot of dilution, some neat, some 10%, but this will be roughly a 22% concentrate juice. So this will be what is that, Parfum? I forget. I'm usually around the 15 to 20% mark, so I think we're still in eau de parfum territory. Whew. Cumin. This stuff is strong, easy to overduce, overdose. Got it. Let's be careful here. 4 drops. I don't want to do another drop. I'll do a partial. Funny story, when I was growing up in middle school, playing football, we were right next to this restaurant. And occasionally I'm running out there and I would get this blast of cumin or body odor. And because they smell basically the same, at least when you're in middle school and you smell a bunch of, middle school boys just smell, let's be honest. And I never knew if my brain should say, this smells good or this smells bad, because if you smell cumin out of a restaurant, you're like, oh yeah, I'm hungry. But if you smell cumin off of someone's armpit, you don't say I'm hungry. You say, bro, put on some deodorant. So funny how the brain works there. I guess context matters. Next up, eugenol. Eugenol, eugenol, eugenol. One of the predominant molecules in clove. Here we go. All right. Scotch break. So, we will give this a little mix. And we will give it a dip. And let's let it rest while we add in some of the woods on the bottom. There's 3 more groups that we're going to put together. First, we have woods that, well, they're a little more aggressive. Then we're going to have our softer base materials, the musks, the sandalwood type materials, the labdanum and the vanillin, which create that amber accord going on bottom. All the soft, smooth stuff, we're going to do that separate, along with the ISO Super. And then we've got our top notes, and those I've got Mandarin, Linalyl Acetate, and Juniper Berry. At least that's what I have classified as our top notes. So we're going to get going with the woody materials. We're going to add these, then we're going to go all the way to the top, then we're going to go back to the bottom. Let's start with want to make sure I have everything. Yeah, okay. Olibanum, also known as frankincense, also sometimes referred to as incense. I have heard people reference frankincense or olibanum simply as incense, which makes sense because frankincense, oh my gosh. Okay, I'll stop saying that. I'm saying sense too much. Okay, wonderful. Olibanum is one of my favorite materials. I think everyone knows, at least for the people who subscribe to the channel so far, that patchouli, dark patchouli, is one of my, if not my, favorite material. Speaking of, it's right here. Olibanum, though, is growing on me. Olibanum and benzyl salicylate both are really growing on me. Okay, next up, dark patchouli. Just a little bit. Oh, that color. That color. There's only a little bit because I'm using this neat. I wish there was more. Alas. Okay, I'm actually going to let this sit in the bottle because there's a lot. It's so thick, it sticks to the inside of the pipette. So if I let it chill, it'll drain to the bottom a little bit. We have 2 more materials that I'm using neat. Kephalis or Kephalis. I want to say Kephalis, that's what goes through my brain, but Does anyone like saying the word phallus? I don't know. So maybe I'll start saying Kephalis. I think that's how Aaron Terrence Hughes says it. And I know he gets a lot of words wrong, but I don't care. I think this will work. Kephalis. If you know differently, let me know. I loved it when Aaron Terrence Hughes started throwing the text up on the screen when he was doing the Perfumer reviews videos. Because some of the stuff, you know, some of the ingredients he would say, I had no idea what they were. Never heard of them, couldn't Google them. And then he started throwing it up on screen. You're like, oh, there it is. And I totally get it. You know, he says he's dyslexic. I don't know what that's like. I'm sure that has some challenges. Also, it's totally true that when you read something over and over and over again, but you never actually vocalize it, you don't know what to do in your mouth. Your brain makes sense of it. You could hear it in your brain, but you can't get it out of your mouth. Next up, Cedarwood, Virginia. Again, using this neat. I'm using this neat because this helps me boost the strength, the concentrate of what I am making. Because I work, everything on this shelf is at most a 10% dilution. That's not entirely true. There's a few up there that are 50% dilutions. But most of them are at 10% dilutions. A few of them are at 1% dilutions. And if I'm using only those materials to put something together, my fragrance will be probably between the 8 and 10% concentrate, within that range. Now this Feminite du Bois is, I believe, a parfum or extrait de parfum. So it ain't 10%. It probably isn't 20%. Maybe it's 25%. I don't know. But I know it's not 8 to 10%. So what I need to do, ooh, that is thick. What I need to do is add neat materials at 100% concentrate, so I can beef up, there we go, that's better. I can beef up the end concentration. I'm glad I let this patchouli sit. There was a good bit in that pipette. So let's put you over here. Okay, we're going to document on our scent strip. We're going to call this Woods. This is number 4. We're going to dip, then we're going to go back and evaluate those spices. I'm going to go back, start with the rosies, or the rose materials, the florals, with the Methyl Anthranilate and the Nectaryl. I can't believe the difference of the Methyl Anthranilate and even the Nectaryl. The Nectaryl gives it this fruity, peachy, lactonic overcoat without dampening the smell. But the Methyl Anthranilate brightens it up, livens it up. It's wonderful. Now, what happens when we add that licorice note, the Canthoxal, Cinnamaldehyde, body odor, or cumin, and Eugenol? Oh, that's wonderful. The cumin is so subtle. And I would be careful with the cumin because I've noticed that as a fragrance matures, sometimes that cumin can come to the forefront. I can smell it subtly. But interesting how the Canthoxal is more subdued than I thought it was going to be, especially given how much of it is in this formula. All right, we are on a roll. Let's see if we can pick up these woods yet. Yeah, cedarwood's coming through pretty strong. And the patchouli. Cedarwood and patchouli. Nice and strong. Nice and strong. Okay, so far, so good. We've got a nice blend. All I'm expecting from here is the Mandarin, Linalyl Acetate, and Juniper Berry to just brighten things up a little bit. And then the musks, the amber, and the Sandalore, and the ISOE Super to simply smooth out the base. And just at the end, have a pretty straightforward but elegant fragrance. So let's add, which way were we going? We're going to add our Mandarin first, then our Linalyl Acetate, then our Juniper Berry. Again, this formula only called for Mandarin. Didn't say green, yellow, or red. So we're going to split the difference and put in yellow. Okay, next up, Linalyl Acetate. .3% of the juice. Ooh, looks like I'm getting close to needing another dilution. Finally, Juniper Berry. I love how bright Juniper Berry is. It's a little piney, woody, but just a little almost citrusy. Okay. All right, let's give this a swirl. Love when you look in the bottle and you see the swirl, or you see the neat materials slowly blending into the solvent. Just cool to see. Okay, next up, we're just going to put top. All right, I'm going to go back to the woods here for a minute. Oh, yeah, solid. That rose in the middle is just smooth. Wow. Boy, I can't wait until we put in these musks, sandalwood, the labdanum, the vanillin. Whether or not this is the real Feminite du Bois, I think this is going to be solid. It's going to be solid. Let's start with the labdanum. Now, this formula explicitly calls for Ambrarome Absolute. This is a little bit different than formal labdanum. The smell's very close. It's a little dirtier. It's an absolute, so the extraction method, must be very, very similar. But it's a little more animalic. It's a little dirtier. I can't say more leathery or smoky like a cistus oil. But it's just a little more animalic, a little more raw. Now, oh, the color's beautiful. Done. Now, don't forget, friends, it almost does not matter how clean and bright and amazing your fragrance is. If there's not some element of gritty, animalic, something in there, it just might not work. Might not work. Okay. Now there's two real animalics in here. There's Indole and there's the Ambrarome. The Ambrarome is wonderful, but the Indole, there's not much Indole, but the Indole does its work. Next up, Ambrettolide. Equal parts Ambrettolide, Cashmeran, and the Ambrarome Absolute. 1.5% of the juice for each of these. Oh, gonna have to make a new dilution. It's like new dilutions day. Done. Okay. Let me set aside the Linalyl Acetate because, oh, and the Ambrettolide. I'm going to need to make new dilutions of those, so let's do it. Next up, Cashmeran. Cashmeran's wonderful. Bright, projecting, a little fruitier. Done. Okay. Before I do anything, I'm going to add in the ISO-E Super. 25% of this is ISO-E Super. And if I add it in last, it's going to take a little too long to really blend in with everything else. Okay, ISO-E Super, done. Let me get this a little swirl. Come on, come on. All right, we'll let that swirl around a little bit. And next up, I'm going to add Exaltolide. Oh, come on, baby. Don't freeze up on me. Exaltolide is solid at room temperature, or at least at room temperature here in the Seattle area. Two more materials. Vanillin. And then Sandalore. Not much vanillin though. Okay, done. Good. Sandalore. When you don't have sandalwood, Sandalore to the rescue. If you smell the bottle, don't poke your nose. Then you get the material on your nose and it messes with you for the rest of the day. Okay, Sandalore. 9% of the formula is Sandalore, and I'm going to need more than one pipette, I think. Yep. Okay. Give that a mix. All right. Okay. The last blotter. Let's let this chill. I'm going to start from the beginning. Here we just have our rose materials, the Ethyl Linalool, the Ylang Ylang, the Isoraldeine 95. And it's really, dare I say, on the verge of being dated. It's as if they took a rose core from the 50s or 60s and said, let's start with this. Let's see how we can improve upon an old idea. Well, first improvement is Methyl Anthranilate and Nectaryl. The addition of this is truly amazing to me. Just with how little was put in there, that completely changes the fragrance. Next up, we add the Canthoxal, Cinnamaldehyde, Cumin, and Eugenol. And this just serves to warm it up. Not just warm it up like the Eugenol would warm something up, but the Canthoxal adds a really nice dynamic to the spiciness. I'm going to note that, because in my mind, whenever I have a fragrance that it needs some more warmth, needs to be sitting by the fire, Eugenol. But Canthoxal adds a nice element to that. And then the cumin is still coming through, but delicately. It's almost in your subconscious. Almost in your subconscious. Next up, we added our woods, the cedarwood, the Kephalis, the Olibanum, and the Patchouli. Interesting, I'm getting a bit more of the Patchouli now, but not so much cedarwood. But you can tell that there are woods. You're starting to get, there's woods here. We added our top notes, which was really juniper, which is pretty woody, the Mandarin, and the Linalyl Acetate. And that's very subtle. Very subtle. And it just brightens it a little bit. It just gives the formula a little shimmer. Just a little shimmer. It's not singing a high, belting a high pitch, high note. It's just a little glow. Finally, all the base. Bring in the base. We got the sandalwood, the musks, and the amber accord. And that works wonders. Wow. It's almost like all the stuff in the base help actually to push out and lift the top notes. Because I'm not getting the top notes so strong without the Ambrettolide, Cashmeran, Exaltolide, Sandalore, Ambrarome Abs, and Vanillin. This is awesome. This is awesome. Oh, I want to try this fragrance just to see how close this is. Whether or not it is Feminite du Bois. This is amazing. Now, this could smell a bit dated. It's from the 90s, my friends. So, and believe it or not, the 90s were like 30 years ago. At least the mid 90s were 30 years ago. So this formula ain't no spring chicken, but this is good. I cannot wait to let this chill for a week, 3 weeks, to give this another try. Once these materials blend together, that's going to be exciting. Until then, I'll be making more videos. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.